Keanu Reeves walked into the small diner like he had done many times before. Wasn't the kind of place you'd expect someone like him to visit. The walls were old. Tables wobbled a little. There were stains on the carpet that looked older than some of the staff. But for Keanu, this place had something most places didn't. It had quiet. The coffee was always strong. He didn't need fancy. He didn't want attention. Just wanted peace. He sat down at a booth in the back. He always picked the same spot, near the window, close to the heater. He wore a simple gray hoodie. His jeans were faded. His shoes, those old leather boots, were scratched and worn. He had worn them for years. They had been with him through quiet nights, hard shoots, long walks through cities where no one knew his name. He didn't care what they looked like. They were his, and they were comfortable. But that morning, someone noticed them. The waiter was new, young, probably just started that week. His name tag said Ricky. He came over holding a notepad and smiled like he knew something others didn't. He looked at Keanu's boots and tried to hide the grin curling on his lips. "You want the usual?" he asked, then glanced at the shoes again, or something. To go with those vintage boots? Keanu didn't react. He had heard worse. But there was something in Ricky's tone, something sharp under the joke that cut through the quiet of the booth. Other tables didn't hear it, but Keanu did. He nodded politely. "Just coffee. And eggs if you've got them." Ricky scribbled the order down, but before he turned, he muttered just loud enough for Keanu to catch. "Guess Hollywood ain't paying what it used to." The words floated in the air for a second before Ricky walked away. Keanu looked down at his shoes and smiled. Not because it was funny, but because it reminded him of something his mother used to say. When people laughed at her old coat, sometimes the people who laugh loudest are just hiding their own cold. The coffee came. The eggs were warm. Ricky didn't return. Another server dropped the plate without looking at Keanu. It was fine. Keanu didn't come for attention. He came because something about this diner felt human. And sometimes that meant seeing the rough edges too. He took out a small notebook and started writing. Not a script, not lines. Just thoughts, memories, pieces of stories he kept tucked away. The boots on his feet had walked through pain and hope. They had stood by graves and by friends. He didn't need them polished to remember that. As he finished his coffee, he noticed Ricky leaning against the counter, laughing with another waiter. Keanu could hear bits and pieces. The word boots came up again. An old guy. Didn't know who he was, or maybe they did. Maybe they just didn't care. Keanu stood up, took out his wallet, and laid a $100 bill under the empty coffee cup. He placed the receipt next to it and wrote one simple line on the back. "Everyone is fighting a battle you can't see. Try kindness." He didn't say goodbye. Didn't look back. Just walked past the counter, past Ricky, and out into the cold morning air. The boots thudded softly against the pavement, steady and Uenbury. But minutes later, Ricky returned to the booth to clean up. He saw the bill and froze. Then he saw the note, and something changed in his face. The grin faded. His hand shook just a little as he picked it up and read the words again. He didn't laugh anymore, and that was just the beginning of what would become one of the most unexpected, unforgettable weeks of Ricky's life. Ricky couldn't sleep that night, kept thinking about the note. He had read it at least a dozen times before the manager came by and snatched it off the table. But it wasn't the words alone that haunted him. It was the way Keanu had walked. Out, calm, quiet, not a single angry word, not a single moment of pride, just stillness. Okay. Ricky had laughed because he thought that's what confidence looked like, being sharp, being quick with jokes. But that man who left without saying anything rude had something stronger, something Ricky didn't understand yet. The next morning, Ricky showed up early. He didn't even realize it until he looked at the clock on the wall. He had come in before his shift. No one noticed. He just sat by the counter, sipping the cheap coffee and watching the front door. Something inside him hoped Keanu would come back. Not because of guilt, not only, but because something about that man's silence made him want to be better. Even if he didn't know how, The diner filled slowly. The same old customers. The man who always asked for toast but never ate. It. The woman who came with her crossword puzzle and stared out the window more than she solved clues. And then there were the regulars, old-timers, who remembered the place before the wallpaper peeled and the coffee pot wheezed when it brewed. Ricky worked the floor that day with a strange kind of energy. He didn't joke. He didn't try to be clever. He just listened. He smiled at the lonely woman in the booth near the heater. He brought an extra spoon to the old man who liked to stir his sugar twice. He even helped Janet, the dishwasher, carry the heavy bin when no one else offered. Somewhere in the middle of his shift, the manager called him over. "You know who that guy was?" he asked, showing Ricky a phone screen. Ricky stared at the photo. It was Keanu, but not in boots and a hoodie. This was red carpet Keanu, the world-famous actor, the guy in movies, the man who had fought robots and saved cities. Ricky felt a hole open in his chest. He left $100 in a note, the manager said. If he ever come back, you treat him like gold. Ricky nodded, but he didn't speak. He wasn't thinking about the tip. He was thinking about the man in the worn shoes who didn't need anyone to know who he was, and how he had responded to mockery with grace. Later that afternoon, Ricky sat on the curb outside during his break. The wind had picked up, and his thin uniform shirt didn't help. He sipped from a paper cup and stared at the sidewalk. Boots had walked here. Just yesterday. A woman sat down next to him. It was Janet, her apron stained and her hands red from the hot water. "You look like you swallowed something sharp," she said. Ricky hesitated, then told her about the joke, the boots, the $100 bill, the note. Janet didn't scold him. She didn't lecture him either. She just nodded slowly and said, "Sometimes the world sends you people like that to hold a mirror up. Sounds like you saw something you didn't like. That's good. Now you can change it." Ricky didn't say much after that, but something in him cracked open. It's the part of him that had been hard for years. It's the part that had learned to laugh first, so he didn't feel small. And just as he stood to go back inside, he noticed a car pulling up across the street. It wasn't expensive, just quiet and dark, the kind of car no one notices. And out stepped Keanu Reeves. Ricky's heart dropped, stared across the street like he'd seen a ghost. Keanu looked around like he wasn't sure if he should come. Back in, his hands were in his hoodie pockets. He was alone, and he was walking toward the diner. Ricky stood frozen on the sidewalk, paper cup in his hand tilted, spilling lukewarm coffee onto his shoe, but he didn't move. Across the street, Keanu Reeves walked slowly, head down, hoodie up, his boots scuffing the pavement like he didn't want to draw attention. Same boots, same silence. But now, Ricky saw everything differently. He watched Keanu reach the door of the diner, pause, look through the glass for a moment, then pull it open gently, like he was stepping into someone else's story. Ricky darted inside behind him. He didn't even think his break wasn't over. But his heart was racing in a way it hadn't for a long time. It wasn't fear. It was something else, something heavier, something real. Keanu glanced around the diner. Yes. Some of the same customers from yesterday were still there. No one noticed him. Not yet. He moved to his usual booth, back corner, near the heater. Ricky took a deep breath, wiped his hands on his apron, and walked over. He didn't speak right away, just stood there, unsure of how to begin. Keanu looked up, calm as ever. No edge in his eyes, no coldness. Just quiet, coffee and eggs. Ricky asked softly, voice thinner than usual. Keanu nodded. Yes, thank you. Gah! Ricky turned to leave, but stopped. He didn't know what gave him the courage, but something inside him wouldn't let it go. I'm sorry, he said. Keanu looked up again, not with judgment, not with surprise, just listening. I laughed at your shoes yesterday, Ricky said. I thought it was funny. I don't even know what I thought, but I was wrong. Keanu didn't flinch, didn't blink, just said, it's okay. But Ricky shook his head. No, it's not, because you didn't have to say anything back. You still left a tip that's more than I make in a day, and a note that's stuck in my head so deep I couldn't sleep. Keanu smiled gently. It wasn't forced. It was the kind of smile that says, "I've been where you are." "Most people are hurting," he said softly. "Even when they're laughing." Ricky sat down across from him without asking. His shift would start yelling in 5 minutes, but he didn't care. This was more important. "Are you?" Ricky asked. "Roiding." The words slipped out without thinking, but they hung in the air like they belonged there. Keanu looked down at his hands. They were rougher than Ricky expected, like someone who had built things, not just acted in movies. "I lost someone," he said after a pause. "Long time ago. Sometimes people think the pain goes away, but it doesn't. You just learn how to carry it." Ricky nodded. His throat was tight. He didn't know what to say. He'd never talked to a celebrity before, and this didn't feel like one. It felt like two strangers sharing a moment no one else could see. Keanu continued, "I wear these boots because they remind me of the days I was invisible. The days before the world expected something from me, when I was just trying to survive. Some people see them and laugh. Some don't see them at all, but they're the most honest thing I own." Ricky blinked. Slowly, his own shoes were spotless. White sneakers polished every night. But he couldn't remember the last time he'd worn something because it meant something. "You came back," Ricky said, almost a whisper. "Why?" Keanu shrugged. "Because yesterday wasn't about me. It was about you." Ricky stared at him, confused. Keanu said, "Sometimes people need a moment to realize who they want to be. I've had those moments. I thought maybe you needed one too." Ricky swallowed hard. He didn't know why, but tears were rising in his chest. Not because he was sad, but because someone saw him, not his uniform. It's not his bad joke, but him. Before he could say more, the manager shouted from the kitchen, "Ricky, booth 4 is waiting." Ricky stood, wiping his eyes quickly. "I'll get your coffee right now." Keanu nodded. No rush. But Ricky moved faster than ever. And when he brought back the coffee, he placed it down like it was something sacred. Because maybe, in a way, it was. For the rest of that morning, Ricky worked differently. Not just better, different. He saw things. A kid sharing fries with his mom, an old man counting his coins 3 times before ordering, a woman reading the same page of her book over and over, trying to forget something. The world was still loud, still busy. But Ricky's eyes had changed, and every time he glanced at the back booth, saw more than just an actor sipping coffee. He saw the moment that was slowly changing his life. The next day, Keanu didn't show up. Ricky kept looking at the door. Every time it opened, he'd glance up from the table he was serving, hoping he'd see that gray hoodie and those quiet boots. But the door just let in cold wind and customers, who didn't notice the change in him. They asked for coffee. They sent back toast. They left loose change as tips. But none of them carried the calm weight Keanu had brought in with him. By the 3rd day, Ricky felt something settle in his chest. Disappointment, not the kind that makes you angry, but the kind that leaves you quiet inside, like you'd heard a beautiful song, and then someone turned the radio off too soon. He hadn't realized how much he'd hoped to see Keanu again, not for the money, not even for the apology, but for the way the silence between them had felt full, it's not empty. That evening, Ricky sat with Janet again on the back steps of the diner. It was colder now. The sky was dark before his shift even ended. "He probably won't come back, Ricky," said Janet, lit a cigarette, and blew the smoke away from his face. "Maybe he wasn't supposed to." Ricky frowned. "What do you mean?" "Some people walk into your life to show you something," she said, "not to stay. Yes. Just to hold up a mirror. Let you see who you really are." Ricky didn't say anything, but the words stuck. The next morning, something changed. Ricky woke up early. He didn't grab his polished sneakers. Instead, he pulled out the old pair in the back of his closet. The ones he used to wear before he started working at the diner. They were faded and torn at the sole, but they were his. He hadn't worn them in over a year, because they were ruined, but because someone once told him they looked cheap. Wore them anyway. When he got to work, the other servers noticed. One of them pointed, "What happened to your shiny kicks?" Ricky smiled and shrugged. "Thought I'd try something real today," said it lightly. but it landed hard. The others didn't know what to say. That day, he worked like it mattered. Not to impress anyone, not for tips, but because he wanted to be present. With every customer, he looked them in the eye. He asked how they were, not out of habit, but with care. And when a man in a wrinkled jacket sat alone in the corner, Ricky sat with him for a full minute before taking his order, just to listen. By lunch, something strange happened. A woman at table 2 called him over. She was older, quiet, had been coming in for months without much talk. She handed him a folded piece of paper. "I saw how you treated that man yesterday," she said. "The one in the hoodie. You didn't know anyone was watching, but I was." Ricky opened the paper after she left. It was a letter, short handwritten. "You didn't just serve coffee, you made someone feel human. Don't stop doing that." Ricky folded it slowly, holding it tight in his hand. Later, as the sun started sinking, a young girl walked into the diner holding her mother's hand. They looked tired, maybe from shopping, maybe from life. They sat in Ricky's section. He brought them menus, knelt down by the table. "Can I get you anything to start?" he asked gently. The mother smiled, embarrassed. "Just a water, please. We'll share a sandwich." Ricky nodded. He didn't flinch. He went to the kitchen, made sure the sandwich had extra fries. Then he reached into his own wallet and covered their bill. He didn't tell them. He just placed the check on the table. Later, with one line written at the bottom, "You deserve a full plate." When they left, the mother looked back at him with eyes full of something he couldn't describe. Gratitude, relief, maybe even hope. And as Ricky cleared their table, he felt it. It wasn't about being watched. It wasn't about being forgiven. It was about choosing again and again to show up with kindness as he swept crumbs off the table. The bell above the door jingled. He turned. There stood Keanu, same hoodie, same boots, but this time something was different in his eyes. He wasn't here to teach anymore. He was here to listen. Keanu stepped into the diner like he had never left. Same calm presence. Same quiet way of walking like the world didn't know him anything. The cold wind followed behind him but faded fast once the door clicked shut. Ricky was still holding a tray when he saw him. His hands froze. His breath hitched. It wasn't nerves, it was something deeper. It's like seeing a teacher you didn't think would come back. Someone who had left you with a lesson and then reappeared just when you were about to ask if you'd learned it right. Keanu scanned the room and saw Ricky right away. He nodded, not a big wave. Just a simple nod, like two people who shared a truth that no one else in the room could see. Ricky walked toward him, heartbeat rising, not with fear but with something close to respect. He didn't try to act cool, didn't crack a joke, just placed the tray down and stood in front of him. "Your booth's open," Ricky said quietly. Keanu smiled. "Thank you." They moved to the corner, the one by the heater, and Keanu sat down. Ricky didn't leave right away. He hesitated. "You came back," Ricky said. Keanu looked up. "So did you." Ricky blinked. "What do you mean?" Keanu leaned forward, hands around the warm mug Ricky had just placed. "You're different. I saw it the moment I walked in." Ricky sat down slowly, checking over his shoulder. "No manager watching. No customers complaining. I've been trying," Ricky said. "Trying to be better. I didn't want that moment to just be a moment. I wanted it to mean something." Keanu nodded slowly. "It does. You made it mean something." They sat in silence for a while. Not awkward, not forced, just stillness between two people who understood something most DI. After a few minutes, Ricky spoke again. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course. Why do you come to places like this? You could go anywhere. 5-star places. Nobody would laugh at your boots there." Keanu looked out the window for a second. His eyes followed the cars on the road, the people walking fast, lost in their phones, their thoughts, their worries. "Because here," he said slowly, "people don't pretend as much. They're tired, they're honest. And sometimes in the quiet places, you find the loudest truths." Ricky thought about that. About Janet. About the mother and daughter. About the woman who wrote him the note. About the old man who counted coins like they were prayers. "I think I used to miss all that," Ricky said. "Before you came in, I just served. I didn't see people." Keanu didn't respond right away. He just sipped his coffee. Then, he said, seeing people is the start, but the real change? It's what you do after you see them. Ricky nodded. The words landed deep. Before Keanu finished his eggs, the manager noticed him. He rushed over, all smiles and handshakes. "Mr. Reeves," he said too loudly, "so good to have you back. Listen, your meal today's on the house." Keanu looked up at him, calm as ever. "I appreciate that. But no, I'll pay." No, I insist," the manager said, looking around, hoping others were watching. Ricky saw Keanu's jaw tighten slightly, not in anger, more like disappointment. "Tell you what?" Keanu said. "Let Ricky decide." The manager blinked. "Excuse me?" "Ricky knows what this place is worth," Keanu said. "He knows better than most what service really means." The manager looked at Ricky unsure. Ricky didn't hesitate. "He pays." Keanu smiled at him like a proud older brother. The manager, caught off guard, nodded slowly and walked away. As the sun moved toward late afternoon, the diner stayed quiet. Keanu stood to leave, sliding a folded bill under his empty plate again. But this time, he looked Ricky in the eye before walking out. "You gave someone a warm meal," he said, "without asking for anything?" Ricky shrugged. "I just wanted her to feel full." Keanu's eyes softened. "You made her feel seen. That's rarer." Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something unexpected. A small, old book. The cover was worn, the pages yellowed at the corners. "My sister gave me this before she passed," he said. "I've carried it for years. It's not expensive, but it meant something to me. And now, I want you to have it." Ricky stared at it, hands shaking as he took it. "Are you sure?" Keanu nodded. "It's not about the pages. It's about what you carry inside you when you read them." And with that, he walked out again. Same quiet steps, same unshined boots. But this time, Ricky didn't feel like something had ended. This time, it felt like something new had just begun. Ricky stood there holding the book long after Keanu left. He didn't move, didn't speak. His hands felt the worn leather cover. The edges were soft. The pages smelled like time. The book wasn't heavy, but something about it made his chest feel full. He opened it gently. Inside the front cover, written in soft black ink, is a single line. "To carry light, you must leave behind what doesn't shine." There was no name, no date. Just that one sentence. He flipped through the pages. It wasn't a novel. It was more like a collection of thoughts. Handwritten stories, sketches, short poems, pieces of life. Like someone had taken all their quiet moments and saved them here. Inside something small enough to carry but deep enough to hold years. Ricky ran his finger across the words. Some were faded. Others were strong. One page talked about grief, another about letting go. There was a page where someone had written about laughter, but it ended with a tear drawn in the corner. None of it made complete sense, but all of it felt real. That night, Ricky didn't go home right away. After closing, he stayed behind in the diner. Janet cleaned in the back. The lights were low, the booths empty. He sat in Keanu's booth, the one near the heater, and opened the book again. This time, he pulled out a pen. On the last page, he wrote his own line. "A man once gave me kindness instead of shame, and it changed everything." He closed the book softly and held it close. Days passed. Keanu didn't come back. Weeks went by, but something in Ricky had changed. Permanently, he still wore the old shoes. Not every day, but often. He said they reminded him to walk like he had nothing to prove and everything to give. He still served coffee, still wiped tables, but now he also carried something more in awareness, a presence. Every time someone looked tired, he noticed. Every time someone ordered alone, he offered a second of real conversation, not forced, just honest. And slowly, things started to shift. The diner didn't change overnight. The floors were still sticky some days. The coffee machine still groaned, like it hated mornings. But people started lingering longer. They smiled more. They told stories while waiting for their toast. A man came in once just to say thank you for how Ricky treated his father the week before. Another woman left a note. That read, "I came in sad. I'm leaving lighter. Thank you." One night, Ricky stayed late again. He opened the book. This time, he noticed something new, a folded piece of paper tucked inside. It had been missed before. He opened it slowly. Dear reader, if you're holding this, then I'm glad. This book isn't about me. It's about the parts of us we leave behind in others. If it finds you during a storm, may it remind you that you are not the storm. You are the one who stands in it. Maybe even holds an umbrella for someone else. Our There was no signature, but Ricky didn't need one. He folded the note back into the book and placed it carefully in a small wooden box under his bed that night. But to keep it safe, months passed. One rainy afternoon, a young man came into the diner. Skinny, nervous, hair too long for his face. He wore a jacket with torn sleeves and shoes that were barely holding together. Ricky greeted him like he greeted everyone now, no judgment, just warmth. Table for one? He asked. The young man nodded. He sat quietly in the corner. Didn't order for a long time. Stared at the menu like it was written in a language he couldn't read. Ricky brought him a hot drink anyway. On the house, the boy looked up, surprised. You didn't have to, he said. Ricky smiled. Sometimes the people who laugh loudest are just hiding their own cold, he said gently. But sometimes, someone brings them a warm drink anyway. Boy blinked. He didn't smile, but his shoulders lowered. Just a little. And that night when the boy left, Ricky reached under the counter. He didn't leave $100. He left a small folded note. You're seen as the boy stepped out into the rain. Ricky watched from the window. No one clapped. No cameras flashed, but the kindness that had begun with $100 tip. And a pair of old boots had found its way forward again.
Roots.
Through one man, into another. And it would keep moving. Because real change doesn't always make noise. Sometimes walks in with worn shoes, sits quietly in the corner, and leaves behind a story that keeps on walking.